Okay, we are in the middle of Torah Chet, called Ra'iti Menorat Zahav, part Tet, the ninth part of the Torah. And we were speaking about yesterday how this Vav Yud, the Vav and the dot, is made up, the Vav and the dot is the vowel called the Shuruk. And by the Ashkenazi traditions, it's called the Melapum. And it's a Vav with a dot in it. The dot is really a Yud, as the Arizal explains, and the Vav and the dot inside is called Melapum. And this vowel, says Rabbi Nachman, represents this whole idea that we're speaking about in this Torah, where you are drawing from the breath of Hashem. The breath of Hashem is the Yud. That's the breath of Hashem, because the Yud, there are 10 different types of Ruach. These are represented by the 10 different pulses that we have. The 10 different types of pulse that we have comes from the 10 different types of Ruach. And they were transmitted to us, they were given to us, they're found in the Torah, and they were revealed to us, given to us by the Aseret HaDibrot. The 10 commandments are the embodiment of these 10 aspects, 10 sfirot of the Ruach of Hashem, the breath of Hashem, the breath of life. And that's the Yud. Now the Vav is the channel through which we draw. Yud, when you take a Yud, if you take any Yud in the Torah, and you just draw from that Yud, lower down, it turns into a Vav. Okay, so the Vav is always drawing from the inner spark, the inner source, the source of that light. That's what the Vav represents. So the Vav with the Yud, it represents drawing from the Yud, the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ruach of Hashem, the breath of Hashem. And that's the Melapum. Why is it called Melapum? The word Melapum means the filling up the mouth. So the mouth is where you take this increased breath, or when you open your mouth in prayer and you're asking Hashem for whatever it is that you're lacking, that you're deficient, that your difficulties that you're going through, for Hashem to help you out of that. And then the Vav, so then Hashem fills up that void and saves you by giving you the breath of Hashem, the breath of life, which is found in the Torah, in the Aseret HaDibrot. Okay? Melapum is the filling of the mouth, because by drawing from this ruach, all of the deficiencies are gone. All of the void is filled up. All that you are needing is rectified. שזהו בחינת אחיו פיך ואמרהו שנתמלא החיסרון כנ"ל. שזהו בחינת מלפום מלופום. וזהו שדקדק אנוכי השם אלוהיך המעלך מארץ מצרים וקיבלו התורה ששם הרוח. By the way, we have the Aseret HaDibrot in this expression for those that are you reading also Vayit Hanan in Chutz La'aretz? Yeah? Okay. So, in Parashat Vayit Hanan, no, you're not Vayit Hanan yet, you're in Dvarim still?
No, we call.
Okay.
We did not speak. We did not this week Dvarim. Yeah.
So next week you're going to have a Aseret HaDibrot, and we have a Aseret HaDibrot this week. So it's really connected to you can say this at, well, those in Eretz Yisrael can say this at this Shabbat table, and those in Chutz La'aretz can say it at least by Shalosh Shudas, because Shalosh Shudas begins the light of the next parsha. Anyways, so Anochi Hashem Elohecha Ma'alcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim וקיבלו התורה ששם הרוח, ואזי דייקה האחיו פיך ואמרהו, בחינת מלפום כנ"ל בחינת שלימות החיסרון. Yesterday we saw that Rabbi Nachman explained the difficult predicament Bnei Yisrael found themselves in Mitzrayim. They were in such a difficult situation, there was no place they can turn for help. There was no way they could draw from this increase of breath, this increase of breath of Hashem, to remove all of the difficulties that we're going through. Usually when you're in a difficulty, when you have adversity, when you have tzarot, when you have a lack, when you have that void, you can draw that energy from the Torah through your connection to the tzaddik and his connection to the Torah, and your connection, all of your connection to Hashem. You can draw that energy, that breath of Hashem, to fill up all your needs. But Bnei Yisrael in Mitzrayim, they couldn't do that. They had the shortness of breath to a point where they couldn't even hear even a hint of chizuk from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to strengthen their spirit and trying to fill them up with emunah. They couldn't even hear Moshe Rabbeinu's voice because of the shortness of breath. So there was no way they could have a salvation from their own doing. They needed some sort of salvation to be brought upon them from above without any preparation on their part. That was their situation in Mitzrayim. Why? says Rabbi Nachman, it's because they didn't receive the Torah yet. If they had had the Torah in Mitzrayim, they would have had this connection to the breath of life, and they would have been able, through this increase of breath, this side to the Ribono Shel Olam, right? They would have been able to draw that breath of life. And that's why it says Rabbi Nachman, if you look in the Pasuk in Tehillim, there's a Pasuk in Tehillim, there's a few places in Tehillim where David HaMelech is speaking about how Hashem saved us from Mitzrayim and all the miracles he did for us, for our forefathers, and in the Midbar, etc. And so one of these places in the 81st parak in Tehillim, he says this pasuk, Anochi Hashem Elohecha, Ha'ma'alcha me'eretz Mitzrayim, right? Hashem tells Am Yisrael, I am Hashem your God, who delivered you from Mitzrayim. And what's the end of the pasuk? What's the continuation? What are the next words? Hachav picha v'amaleu. Open your mouth and I will fill it up. What's the connection? The beginning of the pasuk to the end of the pasuk. But now it's beautiful. Now it's all understood. I am Hashem your God who delivered you from Mitzrayim, right? And in Mitzrayim, you were in such a difficult place. You didn't have the Torah yet. But I'm giving you the Torah. That's what Hashem says. Anochi Hashem Elohecha. That's when Hashem gave us that Seret HaDibrot. That's the first of the 10 commandments. Now that you have the Torah, Hachav picha v'amaleu, and I will give you that breath of life. From the Torah, you will receive that breath of life that will take you out of all of the adversity that you're experiencing. Shlemut hachisaron. Okay? כי דייקה אחר יציאת מצרים בחינת אמר לך מארץ מצרים שאז נתבטל בחינת מקוצר רוח הנ"ל כי קיבלו התורה ששם הרוח חיים כנ"ל על כן אז דייקה אחר פיך ואמלאו. Now that they're out of Mitzrayim and they received the Torah, now you can draw from this breath of Hashem. בחינת שלמות החיסרון, which fulfills all your needs. בחינת מלוא פום, the filling of the mouth, right? The filling of all your needs that comes from the opening of the mouth, and the deeper breath, bechinat melopum, bechinat yimale Hashem kol mishalotecha, which is filling up the void in the heart, right? Beginning of the Torah, right at the beginning of this Torah, Rabbi Nachman says that where is the lack felt? When you're lacking something, where is it felt? It's felt in the heart. And so it's a deficiency in the heart. The spirit of the heart is lacking. And that's why whenever the Torah many times describes when a person's heart's desires, right? Why is it called your heart's desires? Yimala Hashem mishalot libecha, because it's your heart that experiencing the lack and that desire. And so that's where the ruach is going to. You're drawing it into your mouth and it's going into the heart, and that's the place where all the chiyut, all of the life energy is. That's the center of life energy in a person's body, is in the heart. And then that sends it out to every part of the body to remove all the deficiencies, to fill all the void. Okay? ימלא השם כל משאלותיך, ועל כן נזכר יציאת מצרים בפרשת ציצית, כי ציצית בחינת הרוח חיים בחינת מאה ברוחות כנ"ל. And now we can also understand why in the parsha of Tzitzit that we read every day in Kriyat Shema, we have remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim. We are commanded to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim in the morning and in the evening, and we do this. We have to intend, right? It's a mitzvah, and so you're increasing the fulfillment of the mitzvah when you're intending specifically, as you're saying the Kriyat Shema, that part in the Kriyat Shema, that I'm right now fulfilling the mitzvah of remembering that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. And as Rabbi Tzadok Akon Milublin and all the other tzaddikim, the Sfat Emet, all of them say, the importance and the significance of remembering that Hashem delivered us from the exile of Mitzrayim every day in the morning and in the evening is that we must also know that it's not just something that happened hundreds and thousands of years ago. It's something that happens constantly. Every day Hashem takes us out of the confinement, the limitations, the difficulties that we are experiencing, and He opens it up for us, and He gives us life, He gives us breath, He makes our body work, He makes everything in our work, in our life, so many things that are working perfectly, that's only working perfectly, and it's only working at all because Hashem is making He's making that possible every day. And so every day Hashem is delivering us from all those limitations, all of that exile, the confinement that we are in, right? Because if it were not for a moment, if Hashem did not take us out of Mitzrayim, then we would be completely limited and completely confined and not able to move. right? So why is that in the Parsha of Tzitzit in the Kriyat Shema? From the three Parshas of Kriyat Shema, we have this mitzvah of remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim in the Parsha of Tzitzit specifically, because as we learned at the beginning, or earlier in the Torah, we learned that this breath of life is drawn from the four corners of the Tzitzit. It's the combination of the four corners of the Tzitzit, which represent the four corners of the earth, the winds, the four types of wind, right? Each one has a different energy. The four directions, the combination of all of them, and the source of all four of them, which those four represent the four elements, they represent the four letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The source of that, as we spoke about, is the Yud Gimel Midot HaRachmim, the 13 attributes of infinite divine compassion. And that is the Ruach of Hashem, that's the breath of Hashem, and that's what we are drawing from, okay, to take us out of the limitations, to take us out of Mitzrayim. And that's why the Parsha, the remembering the Yetziat Mitzrayim, is in the Parsha of Tzitzit, because that's where it's drawn from. The Ruach Chaim, the breath of life, is drawn from the aspect of the Tzitzit, the channels through which we draw this breath of Hashem, the 13 attributes of Rachamim, is drawn through the four elements, the four letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the four corners of the Tzitzit. Okay? גם דיבר אז מעניין 12 שעות היום או 12 שעות הלילה, שיש בהם 12 צירופי הוויה, בכל שעה יש צירוף אחר, בכל שעה נחלקת לתת-רב חלקים, וכל חלק וחלק מתת-רב חלקים, יש בו גם כן צירוף השם, וכל זהו בחינת רוח החיים שבדופק, ולא זכיתי לשמוע באיור עניין זה היטב, גם שכחתי קצת מזה והמשכילים יבינו. So Rabbi Natan is now just pointing out something that Rabbi Nachman spoke about when he gave over this Torah, but he doesn't remember the details of it. So this is what he does remember. That when Rabbi Nachman gave over this Torah, he spoke about how there are 12 hours in the day and 12 hours during the night, okay? And they represent the 12 possible combinations of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Okay, Yud Kei Vav Kei, as we said, are the four elements, are the source of the four elements, and they are the four channels through which we draw the breath of life, the breath of Hashem. Those are the four letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the different energies that we experience throughout the day, what's called different hanhagot, okay, the way Hashem runs the world in different ways, the shifts in the energy, the shifts in the hanaga throughout the day and the night is because there is a different name of Hashem, a different combination of the letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei that is lit up, that is in charge, or that is the way that the energy of life is drawn to us. So if the combination of the Yud Kei Vav Kei is different a little bit, then that shifts the way the breath, the energy of life is drawn to us at that moment. Okay, so there are different combinations. There are 12 possible combinations of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and they are represented by 12 hours of the day and also the 12 hours of night. And Rabbi Nachman also said that in each hour of the day, okay, there is Kabbalistically, every hour is not split up into 60 minutes. Instead, Kabbalistically, every hour is split up into 1,080 parts. Tat-rav chalakim, 1,080 parts. Every hour is split up into 1,080 parts because there are 1,080 possible combinations of different names of Hashem that are lighting up, and they are through which we draw the energy in each pulse. Every moment of each one of these 1,080 moments of the hour, there is a different pulse that is drawn to us through another combination of these names of Hashem. And there are 1,080 combinations, and that's how the hour is split up into 1,080 different parts. But says Rabbi Natan, I didn't really hear the whole explanation, the length of the explanation of this idea as Rabbi Nachman gave it over. I didn't hear the length of the explanation of this idea at the time. Okay, Rechev Elohim Ribotayim Alfei Shin'an. So this is a pasuk in Tehillim that says that Hashem's chariots are twice 10,000. Okay, so they are twice 10,000, and they are thousands upon thousands. So Ribotayim, Ribo means 10,000. Ribotayim is 10,000. So the chariots of Hashem are 2 times 10,000, which is 20,000. Alfei Shinan, thousands upon thousands. Okay, so what is this teaching us? What are we learning from this pasuk in Tehillim? Alfei, says Rabbi Nachman, Alfei is what we spoke about earlier in the Torah. It represents the Alufei Esav, same word. Alfe, Alufe, very similar. The Alufe Esav, which is the Rav Reve Esav, the rabbis of Esav, Esav's side, the rabbis of the Klippa. Bechinat Alufe Esav. And through the 20,000 chariots of Hashem, okay, but what is that representing? What is that speaking about? Bechinat Kabbalat Torah, shemisham mekablim haruach chaim harabanim dikdusha. So ribotayim, 20,000 also sounds very much like the rabbis, like the word for rabbanim. Rabotayim, okay, the rabbis, your rabbis, okay. So rechev Elohim ribotayim. The rabbis are receiving from the Torah, which is the Ruach Elokim. Where do we know that the Torah is where the Ruach of Hashem is found? Because Rabbi Nachman brought the pasuk in Bereshit that it says, "Ve'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim." The Spirit of Hashem is floating upon the water. The water, says the Zohar, is the Torah. So from here we know that the Ruach Elokim is in the Torah. So this is called Ruach Elokim. Okay, and Rechev Elokim Ribotayim is teaching us, says Rabbi Nachman, Bechinat Kabbalat Torah, receiving the Torah, from which we receive the breath of life, the breath of Hashem. Who receives it for us? The rabbis of the Kedusha, the rabbis that are opposite of the rabbis of Esav. Harabanim dikdusha. Alidei ze alfei shinan, kemo darshu chachamenu zichronam levacha, atike shinan, ela she'einan. היינו שעל ידי קבלת התורה ששם הרוח דהרב דקדושה, על ידי זה נתבטלים ונכנעים אלופי עשיו רבבי עשיו, שהם בחינת הרב דקליפה, בחינת אלפי שאינן, שאלופי עשיו רבבי עשיו נתבטלים ואינן. So there's a drasha in the Gemara on this pasuk, אלפי שינן, the drasha in the Gemara, אלפי שינן is, don't read alfei shinan, thousands upon thousands, but read the word shinan as she'enan, that are no longer. They cease to exist. So if you use that drasha in the Gemara and Masechet Avodah Zarah on the word shinan, she'inan, they cease to exist. Alfei shinan, the alfei Esav, alufei Esav, the chiefs of Esav's families, the rabbis of the Klippa, cease to exist. How does that happen? How do you cause for the rabbis of the Klippa to cease to exist? How do you get rid of them? Through the beginning of the pasuk, through the Rechev Elohim Ribotayim, by drawing the Ruach of Hashem, the Ruach Elokim, who draws it for us? The rabbis, the Ribotayim. They draw it from the Torah. And through that, Alfei Shinan, the Alufei Esav cease to exist. Okay? Now in part Yud Aleph of the Torah it says, Rabbi Nachman, Mikenaf Haaretz Zemirot Shamanu Tzevi LaTzadik, Va'omar Razili, Razili, Oili, Bogdim Bagadu, Veget Bogdim Bagadu. Okay, so this is a pasuk in Yeshayahu, and it says that from the corners of the earth we heard sons. Mikenaf Haaretz Zemirot Shamanu. Tzevi LaTzadik. Tzevi LaTzadik means glory to the tzadikim. Va'omar, but I said, Razili, my secret to me, Razili, my secret to me, Oili, woe to me, Bogdim Bagadu, the traitor is betrayed, Uveged Bogdim Bagadu. Beged Bogdim, and those who betrayed the traitors have betrayed. Beged Bogdim, those who betrayed the traitors, Bagadu, also were betrayed. Okay, but Beged, Bogdim, Beged, the word for betrayed also sounds like Beged, which is a lot of the drashot and Likutei Moharan is all about what one word sounds like. And the reason why it sounds like a different word is because it has an aspect to it that is connected to that. And there are many things we can learn from that. And so many of the Arizal teaches us that there are Shiv'im Panim LaTorah. There are 70 possible faces, 70 ways to explain the whole Torah. But the Arizal says it's way more than that. The Arizal says. He says there are four ways to learn every part in the Torah, every line in the Torah, every word in the Torah. There are 4 ways to learn it according to the Pshat, the simple understanding, the Remez, which is all of the metaphors and the hints that are alluded to in that word, the Drash, which is all the ways that you can explain it, the different explanations for it. You see a lot in the Gemara, you see a lot in the Midrashim, and then you have the Sod, which is the secret behind it, the source of it, on a completely supernatural dimension, supernatural level. So it's beyond any way of connecting it to the physical. All of the explanations of drush and remez and sod are ways that you can connect it to our physical experience. The sod is on a different plane. And even that has also, each one of these four also has four. But Rabbi Nachman says that the 70 ways of explaining the Torah are within each one of these four. So it's really 280, right? It's 4 times 7. 4 times 70, 280 different ways. But he says, wait, there's more, says Rabbi says the Arizal. He says, there are 600,000 source neshamot of the Torah. 600,000 source neshamot. Each one of our souls are sourced in one of these 600,000 source neshamot. Okay? Each, says the Arizal, each one of these 600,000 source neshamot of Bnei Israel, each one of them has their own 280 ways to explain the Torah, has their own 70 ways to explain the Torah according to the 4 different ways of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. And so it's 600,000 times 280, those are all the possible ways of explaining the Torah. And so many of these ways of explaining and understanding the Torah are just different. When one word sounds like another word, you can learn things from that word and from the context you can learn tremendous secrets of the Torah in this way. And we see that the Chachamim and the Midrashim and the Gemara do this many times. They frequently do this. And obviously you need a certain level of Ruach HaKodesh in order to be able, certain divine inspiration, divine insight, to be able to know when and where you can make these drashot and you can have these understandings. But Rabbi Nachman uses that a lot. So in this pasuk as well, he says, Beged Bogdim Bagadu, even though it's speaking about those who betrayed, the ones who betrayed were also betrayed. So, but that word beged is a reference to the tzitzit. It's a reference to the tzitzit, which is the beged. And also the beginning of the pasuk, when it speaks about from the corners of the earth we heard songs, is also the corners of the tzitzit, is also alluded to in that part of the pasuk. And so in our next year, I'm just going to read till the end of this paragraph, and then in the next year we're going to explain it more. This is the aspect of the corners of the tzitzit. This is where the breath of life is. Which is the aspect of the harp of David that would play through the northern wind. And we said the northern wind is this breath of life that fills up all that is lacking, all the void, right? And so that's the aspect of the corners of the tzitzit. They are drawing from, they are connected to this northern wind, the breath of Hashem. Shu bechinat kino shel David, שהוא היה מנגן על ידי הרוח צפונית, כי הנגינה והזמירות נמשכים מהרוח חיים שבכנפי ריאה כידוע, וזהו זמירות שמענו. And this is where song is brought to. The whole aspect of song is when you fill the void, when you are no longer lacking. When you are filling the void, when you are no longer deficient, that's when you experience the song. And that's why that's where the songs of David, the harp of David, would play from this breath of life that is drawn and fills up the void, removes the deficiencies. That's when the songs of David are played. That's what song is at its source. Song is when you no longer have those deficiencies. Okay, that's why the pasuk is saying, from the corners of the earth, which is the corners of the tzitzit, we heard songs, mirot shamanu. We heard songs, because that's the whole sod. The secret of the song is the removal of the deficiencies. Bechinat hanigun shel kino shel David, the song of the harp of David, shu bechinat haruach chaim, shu bechinat kanfei tzitzit, which is the aspect of this breath of life, the aspect of the corners of tzitzit, bechinat mikenaf haaretz, which is alluded to when it says the corners of the earth. And through this, we get rid of and we subdue the Rishaim. We make the Rishaim cease to exist. Which is, as we mentioned this pasuk earlier in the Torah, that Hashem holds on to the corners of the earth and He shakes it like a talit. He shakes it like a talit, and all of the Rishaim fall off of it. They are no longer able to hold on to those 4 elements and draw their life, the breath of life, right? Hashem holds on to the talit and shakes all of the Rishaim, and they're no longer able to draw their breath of life. So that's how they cease to exist, right? Alfei she'inan, they cease to exist. So we're going to see the continuation of this pasuk and the explanation of it, Bezrat Hashem, in our next shir. Okay.